Hello, hi, my name is Min. Welcome to my channel, Min's English class. Today, we're going to talk about TOEFL writing. And if you want to get higher scores in TOEFL writing, you must have great templates for your essays. And as an English teacher for more than a decade, I've taught thousands of students on how to ace TOEFL exams. And today, I will show you how you can get high scores in TOEFL writing. But before I talk about the template, you have to remember 3 keys to success. 3 keys to success. Alright? Number 1, try to write at least 200 words. So at least 200 words, but no more than 250. Okay, 250 words, that's too much. Okay, and finish your essay within 18 minutes. So the second key is finish your essay within 18 minutes so you can spend the rest checking your writing for errors. So don't forget to revise it. So 18-minute finish and 2-minute revision. Revise it. Don't just leave it as a rough draft. And my third key is this section is all about listening. So try to take notes of every important detail from the lecture. So the third key is to take notes. Well, all right. So those are the 3 keys to success if you want to ace TOEFL writing. Okay? Alright, so here it is. The magical template for TOEFL writing section, especially for the integrated section, which is the task 1. Here, let's take a look. Now, let's take a look from the top to the bottom. Okay? In the reading passage, there is ample evidence for the writer's claim that, and here we put R1. I'll explain that later. According to the lecture, however, the professor gives several convincing reasons as rebuttals. To begin with, the professor states that here we do L1. And this is because, and we do L1D. Okay? And here, this explanation strongly contradicts the reading claim that here we put R2. Okay? Now, we have covered already 2 paragraphs of our essay. Let's move on. In addition, the lecturer insists that L2. In fact, L2D. Right. This view is in direct opposition to the reading which contains, here we put R3. And lastly, he or she argues that here we put L3. And to illustrate, we put L3D. And lastly, this finding counters the reading's assertion that, and we put R4. Okay, and that's the essay. That's the essay that you are supposed to write. And in order to fill this out, you need to fill everything. Here, R1, R2, R3, and R4. You need to get those 4 sentences from the reading passage over here. And anything that starts with L is from the listening or the lecture. And so this one is the first point from the lecture. And this is the detail. And this is the second and the detail. And this is the third and the detail. Okay? And we need to get that information from our note-taking. Okay? So let's take a look at our reading. Here is the reading passage, and it talks about the populations of the yellow cedar is decreasing, and it gives 3 reasons why that is happening. So let's take a look. The first paragraph talks about the decline of the yellow cedar is caused by 3 reasons. The reading thesis is usually the last sentence here. So over here, scientists have advanced several hypotheses to explain this decline. And that's our R1. And we're going to use that right here. But then we cannot copy words to words because that would be plagiarism. And plagiarism is an act of crime. You should never commit that. And you should change the wording, change the words and everything to make it into a sentence of our own. So let's do that. Let's do a paraphrase. Okay? So here we need to do what we call paraphrase. Okay, so we can change. Scientists have advanced several hypotheses to explain this decline. We can change the order of the sentence by saying, so R1 would be population of cedar is declining. Declining, but why is it declining? For the reasons proposed by scientists. So we have a sentence that basically mean the same thing, but look very different, right? So scientists have advanced several hypotheses to explain this decline, and this sentence, population of cedar is declining for the reasons proposed by scientists. That's what paraphrasing is, okay? So we're gonna insert that right here. So in the reading passage, there is ample evidence for the writer's claim that population of cedar is declining for the reasons proposed by scientists. All right, so now we need R2, and we can find what R2 is in our next paragraph. So let's take a look right here. Okay, so usually the topic sentence of any body paragraphs of the reading passage, they are usually on the first sentence. And let's look at the first one. The yellow cedar decline may be caused by insect parasites, specifically the cedar bark beetle. But that alone is not enough. So we need to find some extra information from the first paragraph. And here we can find it recorded instances of sustained beetle attacks. So now we know that the beetle attacks have been repeated. Okay, and we can change the sentence into the one that we like using our own words. And we can say R2 repeated. Repeated attacks from parasites. Such as which beetle? Cedar bark beetle. Cedar bark beetle. Cedar bark beetle caused the tree's decline. The decline. Okay, so that's our paraphrase sentence. And then let's move on to do this one, R3. And it's on the third paragraph of the reading passage. Let's take a look. And here we have a second hypothesis attributes the decline to brown bears. Now we need a little more details how brown bears cause the decline. Here we can find it, their aggressive feeding habits. So in order to feed themselves, brown bears use their claws to damage the cedar trees. So that's what it's basically saying, and let's paraphrase that. And we can use violent instead of aggressive, and we can say methods instead of habits. So using synonyms or words with similar or same meanings are usually very helpful when you do paraphrasing. So our paraphrase sentence would look like brown bears violent feeding methods are. So we can use be responsible for to replace the word cause by switching subject and object. So the subject is brown bears, so they are responsible for the decline. Okay, so we need the last one. So let's take a look. So here in the reading passage it says, gradual changes of climate may be to blame, and the extra detail would be, growing roots are sensitive and are therefore likely to suffer damage from partial freezing on cold winter nights. So basically, because of the global warming, the growing roots have been damaged by the frost, and then they couldn't survive to become an adult cedar tree, so that's what is causing the decline. Okay, so let's give it a twist of our own. We can say temperature changes instead of saying climate change. So our R4 would be temperature change. Made. So instead of saying cause, we can say made. Growing root. Vulnerable to cold. So now we have it. We have the 4 sentences. So when you actually take TOEFL integrated section of the writing, what you should be doing in that 3 minutes of reading time is to do this. Find out where the key points are and change the wordings and paraphrasing them. That's what you should be doing in that minute. And now let's move on to note-taking. Okay? So I'll give you the whole lecture on this topic, but please focus on just the points talked about the reading passage. Try to take notes on every single detail if you can. Okay, so I'll leave you up to it and I'll show you mine later. Okay, so let's do it.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
Unfortunately, we still don't know what's killing the yellow cedar. None of the explanations discussed in the reading is adequate. First, the cedar bark beetle. Well, the problem with this explanation is that healthy yellow cedars are generally much more resistant to insect infestation than other tree species. For example, the bark and leaves of the yellow cedar are saturated with powerful chemicals that are poisonous to insects. So healthy cedars are unlikely to suffer from insect damage. So how can we explain those dead cedars that were infested with beetles? In those cases, The beetles attacked trees that were already damaged or sick and would have probably died anyway. So the beetles are not the fundamental cause responsible for the decline of the yellow cedars. Second, although bears damage some trees, they're not the cause of the overall population decline. Yellow cedar populations have been declining all across the northwestern coast of North America, both on the mainland and on islands just off the coast. There are no bears on the islands, yet the island cedars are still in decline. Since the decline occurs with and without bears, the bears cannot be responsible. And finally, the theory about the roots suffering from frost damage. Well, the reading passage forgot to take one fact into account. Many more trees are dying at lower elevations, where it is warm, than at higher elevations, where it is cold. If freezing damage were responsible for the decline, we would expect to see more trees dying in the cold weather of high elevations. Instead, more trees are dying in the relative warmth of the low elevations. So although the climate change may have made the cedar roots more sensitive than they used to be, this isn't what's killing them.
Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they challenge the specific theories presented in the reading passage.
Okay, here we go. So this is my note-taking. So I took notes from the first paragraph, and this from the second and the third and the last. I hope your note-taking, I hope your note is as detailed as mine, but let's take a look. So the lecturer is basically saying none of the evidence, none of the explanations are adequate to explain the decline of the cedar. And her first point was and the first point the professor was trying to make was when cedar trees are healthy, they are more resistant to insect infestation. For example, the cedar barks and leaves are saturated with chemicals, poison. So here, notice how I wrote poison, but then I excluded all the vowels to make it shorter. So chemicals, poison to insects, but we have to change that to poisonous, right? So because of the poisonous chemicals, the barks and the leaves they have, they were pretty much resistant to insect attacks. And the next point was bears. So this X is not. So bears are not the overall cause. Yellow cedar, I kind of wrote them in abbreviation so that I could save more time. Yellow cedar, their population decreased on both mainland and, so the plus sign is and on the island. But bears do not live on the island, right? So the decrease happened with or without bears, which explains bears are not the cause. And lastly, the professor made a point saying that there were more deaths at lower elevations. And when you're at lower elevations, the temperature is warmer than colder. So, which counters the reading's passage. Here it said they were dying because of the cold, but then here it is saying it didn't matter. The yellow cedar, they were dying more when they were at lower elevations where the temperature was warmer. So the climate change didn't kill the yellow cedar. So we can put all these informations right here. Okay, let's give it a try. So Right now, we have the template, we have our perfect paraphrasing, and now we have our note-taking. And just by adding these three things together, we can get a perfect score in our integrated section of TOEFL writing. And now all we need to do is to punch in these data into our template to complete the essay. All right, but then always leave 2 minutes before the end of the exam, so you can check your grammar for errors, and also you have time to revise. And next class we will talk about another example where we can use this one. Okay, practice doing a test mock exam with the template that I have given you, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you so much for listening to my lecture. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.